need to take this moment as Republicans and not waste it.
That's right.
It should be about addition, not subtraction, welcoming more people into the party.
We're going to find that he attracted a coalition of people unlike a Republican has attracted for many, many years.
Every single state in this country went more red except Nebraska and Delaware this morning. That's just unbelievable.
Yeah. This is a real political realignment, and it's a tectonic shift. The Democrats' failed policies and their radicalization, whether it's defund the police, woke DEI agenda in our schools, that's not where the vast majority of the American people are.
An unprecedented campaign concludes with Donald Trump once again becoming president-elect. And just moments ago, the Fox News decision desk can project that President-elect Trump will, in addition to everything that he's got so far, claim Michigan. It completes his sweep of the 3 blue wall battlegrounds as he did back in 2016. Trump recapturing the White House after a strong performance in all the battleground states that could potentially see him win all 7 of them, though 2 remain uncalled at this point. Hello, I'm John Roberts. How much did you sleep last night?
I was going to say, it's like we never left, right? Great coverage on broadcast last night.
Your voter analysis was fascinating.
Yeah, what a night. What an historic night for everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. Welcome, everyone. This is America Reports. The cover of the New York Post. He's done it again. Trump pulls off comeback for the ages with election win. The president-elect sweeping the Southeast and demolishing the Democrats' blue wall by flipping Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia while holding on to North Carolina.
Votes are still being counted in Nevada and Arizona, but right now Trump is leading in all of those states. They're also still counting in Michigan, even though we've called it. And now the nation waits to hear from Vice President Harris for the first time since her defeat. That'll be just a few hours from now.
We have Fox team coverage for you. Kim Strassel's here with analysis. Jackie Heinrich has the latest from the Harris campaign.
But we begin with Bill Melugin. He is live in West Palm Beach, Florida, where Trump delivered his victory speech early this morning. Bill, you've got to be feeling pretty good at the Trump camp right now.
John, they're feeling fantastic, and right now Republicans are hoping they can pull off the whole trifecta. They've already won the White House, they've already flipped the Senate. Now they're hoping they can maintain control of the U.S. House of Representatives, which is still too close to call. Just a short time ago, Mitch McConnell said he congratulates Donald Trump for running what he calls a, quote, sharper operation and for flipping control of the Senate. Take a listen.
I had really hoped I'd be able to hand over to my successor the majority. I've been the majority leader, I've been the minority leader. The majority's a lot better.
And this was Trump at his watch party last night here in West Palm Beach. The race was called for Trump just before 2 o'clock in the morning. The tipping point was when he won the battleground state of Pennsylvania. Just a short time before that, he had picked up Georgia and North Carolina, and now it appears he is set to win even more battleground states. You guys just made the call on Michigan. It's possible he may do a clean sweep of all the battleground states. The RNC chairman says Trump simply outworked Kamala Harris, relying on regular people, not celebrities or singers.
On top of everything, you have to remember Donald Trump. He was the guy that was out there talking directly to every American family, every voter in every one of these battleground states. And nobody worked harder than Donald Trump to connect directly to the voters about the issues that they cared about.
And John, as you're well aware, it is very significant that Republicans have flipped control of the Senate and will be taking control of the Senate. It's going to make it a whole lot easier for Donald Trump to get his appointments and his cabinet positions confirmed, Senate confirmed. That would include things like DHS secretary and ICE director, given his plans for mass deportations. We'll send it back to you.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of legislation for which he would need a 60-vote threshold, and he likely won't get anywhere near that. So we'll see how the future progresses. Bill Melugin for us. Bill, thank you. Sandra.
All right, Bill, thank you very much. John, thank you. We are awaiting Vice President Harris, meanwhile, her first remarks after her defeat to Trump. The Harris campaign now trying to figure out how she lost so decisively. White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich is live in Washington, D.C. Of course, now we look forward to what she'll say at 4. Jackie, what has the Harris campaign been saying to Democrats?
Well, Sandra, they actually haven't told any of their own surrogates anything, including what to tell their donors or even how to understand what happened last night. We don't know what the vice president is going to say this afternoon, aside from conceding this election, because some sources are admitting to me right now the Democrat Party is soul searching. As one person put it, the Democratic Party has no leader right now, period, because they cast Joe Biden, the sitting president, aside, and the candidate that they installed lost really big. Not only was the party very far out of touch with the majority of the electorate on big issues like immigration and the economy, but their strategy of telling people not to believe their lying eyes just simply did not work. A few sources are beginning to acknowledge to me that the Democratic Party, sort of living within this liberal media echo chamber, confirmed internal biases that ended up giving a skewed perception of reality. Part of the autopsy right now is probing whether or not they would have fared better if Joe Biden had stayed in the race. Listen.
I think it's hard to look back and talk about what could have or might have or should have been. President Biden has a very strong legislative record of bipartisan accomplishments, but we are going to have to sit down as a Democratic Party and look hard at why that didn't compel more folks to come out and vote for Democratic candidates, both in the Senate and in our presidential candidate, Vice President Harris.
Now, one Harris surrogate told me that all the headlines that we've been watching for the last several weeks were also being read within her circles, and people were raising the alarm, for instance, about her failure to clearly articulate her policy positions and focusing so much on threats to democracy.
One thing that I think she knows was a mistake was to say on The View that she couldn't think of it.
Whether or not, so internally there is some wonder about whether or not they were all just sort of blinded by hope, and how long they knew that her chances were very slim, and why that wasn't shared more widely with whether or not they were all just sort of blinded by hope, and how long they knew that her chances were very slim, and why that wasn't shared more widely within the Democratic Party circles and the circles within the campaign. Sandra.
A lot to dig into there. Jackie Heinrich, thank you very much. John.
Yeah. All right, let's bring in Kim Strassel, opinion columnist for the Wall Street Journal and a Fox News contributor. So, Kim, as we think to where the Harris campaign went wrong, were they just punching above their weight? Or was it something else? Here's what you wrote back on Halloween. You said, quote, Democrats trash talk the voters. From deplorables to garbage, contempt doesn't seem to be a winning message. So the Trump coalition was working Americans, Hispanic voters, black voters, business owners. Democrats, Harris, Biden, were ridiculing them, intimating at some point that they're even Nazi supporters. And they said, oh, yeah? Watch this.
Watch this. No, absolutely. Look, I still believe it was her biggest tactical error to end her campaign by calling him a fascist and, in essence, tarring all of his potential would-be supporters. First of all, because she wasn't reaching anyone that hadn't already made that decision that they were going to vote for her on those grounds in the first place. Mm-hmm. What voters wanted to hear, Joe Biden, he has this amazing record, and we just somehow didn't connect. That's not the problem. The problem was a progressive agenda that was adopted by Barack Obama, turbocharged by Biden and Harris, that's directly linked to inflation, border chaos, interest rates, you name it. And the American people wanted a change from that. They need to sit down and look at their ideas, which are not resonating with the public.
Not resonating with the public. Did they even speak to the American public? I mean, the case can be made that Donald Trump, I mean, in all the days leading up to Election Day, he spent so much of his time and his energy in his campaign speaking directly to the American people. It was almost like Kamala Harris, when it came to, say, the economy, for example, it was kind of like, I know what's best, just believe me, check my website, I've got a plan. She never really fully articulated that plan to the American voter who's struggling through, in most battleground states, prices up 20%.
And that's another thing, too. Americans didn't believe Democrats in the end. She ran away from a number of these policy positions, but they could see her on record, and then her decision to not fully articulate an agenda led them to believe that they would have a continuation of the same. They're going to have to really dig deep and make a decision about whether or not they are willing to change course, not just on, by the way, to economic issues, but we're seeing out there that cultural issues hurt them a lot as well.
So a big part of Trump's victories in some of the battlegrounds was black male voters. Here's what our Fox News voter analysis found about them. Among black men, Harris got 74% of the vote. Trump got 24% of the vote. That group of voters had been repeatedly scolded, first by Barack Obama and then by Michelle Obama, who said, quote, "Your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage for your rage." The message that they were putting out there, the Obamas, was if you don't suck it up and vote Democrat, you're going to be held responsible for every bad thing that happens to your family. And how do you think black men responded to that?
Well, I think we saw how they responded to it. And this was another big tactic Democrats had at the end, which was to essentially, as you say, shame voters into voting for Democrats, because apparently that was the only moral position to take. You had Michelle Obama suggesting that if you didn't vote for Kamala Harris, you didn't care about women, i.e. you're a misogynist. You have Barack Obama out there telling black men that he thought that really the reason that they weren't voting for Kamala Harris is because they weren't really feeling having a woman in the White House, suggesting that if they didn't vote for her, they were sexist. You had Mark Cuban out there suggesting that women that were surrounding Donald Trump, none of them were very bright or had much of a backbone. These are not the ways to encourage Americans to vote for you, by essentially vote shaming them.
I want to finish up with these words from the former president as we see that video of him taking the stage last night. I'm being delivered a mandate. Listen.
We're going to fix everything about our country, and we made history for a reason tonight. I hope that you're going to be looking back someday and say that was one of the truly important moments of my life when I voted for this group of people beyond the president, this group of great people. America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate.
So now time to get to work, right, Kimberly? Because, you know, he's identified a lot of the problems, sky-high prices still out there, you know, an open border, and there's going to be a lot of work to do. Final thought.
Well, he makes a good point there, which is that the margin of his victory is such that he did help pull some of these other candidates over, over the finish line. Maybe a few more in the Senate, even. We have yet to see some of those races, and that's another consequence of this for Democrats. But there's a lot of work ahead, Sandra and John. I mean, those numbers are going to be good for him in terms of getting a cabinet confirmed and everything. But think about the mountains of regulation that Biden's put on the economy. The tax bill is coming up this next year. He's going to need those numbers and maybe some more if they want to get across a bold agenda.
All right, Kimberly Strassel, it's great to catch up with you and get your thoughts. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You too.
Well, that was quite a night last night, wasn't it?
You know, I was saying to the team earlier, it was right around 7 o'clock that we were, as a team, looking through the Fox News voter analysis, and there was these stories that were happening early on.
You started to
with some
notice
of the
these
data.
trends.
Absolutely. The black vote down in Georgia, for example, where she was significantly underperforming with the black vote in Georgia. And we started to see that happen early in the evening, and it became a national story as well. And there was a very notable, significant shift from the minority vote in this country away from Democrats to the Republican candidate. We saw it with the Hispanic vote as well.
Yeah, they just did not resonate with so many voting groups across this country. And that's why it looks like Donald Trump is on pace to take every one of those 7 battleground states. That's remarkable.
It is incredible. A historic moment for sure. President-elect Donald Trump making history with this win. Larry Kudlow, he's excited to join us today. Can you imagine? He says it's part of a growing movement across this country. He is here to react.
And what does the Fox News voter analysis tell us about why voters decided to give Trump a landslide victory? Katie Pavlich breaks it down with us at the touchscreen, coming up next.
You have to remember Donald Trump. He was the guy that was out there talking directly to every American family, every voter in every one of these battleground states. Donald Trump took every opportunity.
Michigan to his victories in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin just a little while ago. And a Senate seat there might flip red as well. Grady Trimble live in Dearborn, Michigan with more. It was a big night for the former president, Grady.
It was, John, and it would be significant if the Republican Senate candidate Mike Rogers were to flip the Senate seat here, because it's been 30 years since Republican won a Senate seat in Michigan. Right now, Rogers' campaign tells us that it is heating with caution and that this Senate race could be the closest in Michigan in decades, if not ever. So here's where things stand right now. At the moment, just under 99% of the votes are in, and Democratic Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin has a slight lead by about 18,000 votes. So this race truly could come down to that 1% of the vote that is still outstanding. I had a chance to speak with Mike Rogers the day before the election, and he told me he was feeling good that if President-elect Trump won Michigan, that he too would win his Senate race. But from the data we've seen so far, it seems Trump has outperformed Rogers, which suggests there could have been some split ticket voting, or folks in Michigan who voted in the presidential race but didn't cast a vote in that Senate race. As far as the issues here in Michigan, top issue by far the economy, according to our Fox News voter analysis. But here in the Detroit suburbs, there's another issue that dominated, and that's the war in the Middle East. For Michigan voters who listed that as their single most important issue, 58% of them sided with Trump. And here in Dearborn specifically, this is a city that President Biden won in 2020 with 74% of the vote. As of right now, with the unofficial totals in from Dearborn, President-elect Trump won this city, and that's because the Trump campaign has been targeting Arab Americans unhappy with the Biden-Harris administration's handling of the Middle East, and it seems to have paid off big time here in Michigan. As we said, John, we're still awaiting the results from that Senate race, and if it is within 2,000 votes, that would trigger an automatic recount. Could be here in Michigan for a while.
All right. Put down roots there. Maybe look into some real estate. Grady Trimble for us. Grady, thank you. Now this.
We went from middle class to straight broke. I had to come back to work and work a full-time job on top with my husband.
Definitely policy, and I also voted for him all 3 times, and it's always been based on policy for me.
All Americans have to realize at this point that this election was a clear mandate for change.
Voters there speaking out about what drove them to the polls as President-elect Donald Trump stays on track to sweep all 7 battlegrounds in a decisive electoral victory. Katie Pavlich is here to dig in what we have seen in our Fox News voter and what we were seeing all night that really told the story of this election. I think you were the last person on set last night.
One of them, yes. For many people, it was a late night, but here we are.
You wouldn't know it by looking at you,
We're
Katie.
happy to be here.
All right, when you showed up, though, today, and we looked back at the analysis last night, and I said, what do you want to focus on? What really tells the story of what happened last night and what's still happening today? You said race was a big part of this, and the change in the electorate and the change in which they voted, especially, I don't know, the Hispanic voter. Yeah. I mean, this was a sizable shift to the Republican candidate in this race.
A huge shift. You're seeing with Hispanic voters. You also saw it with black voters. And it's a difference in the way the campaigns conducted the style of what they wanted to talk about. Trump campaign was very focused on the economy. The Harris campaign made this assumption that identity politics would take them over the finish line, didn't offer any kind of substantive policy measures on the economy.
Because he ran this number up. While she still got the most support, he ran this number up way beyond the benchmark that Biden won with.
She had a very difficult time untethering herself from the Biden-Harris policies of the past 4 years among all of these demographic groups who are focused on the economy. Now, keep in mind, these are the same groups that the White House was telling for 3 years inflation wasn't happening, then it was transitory, and they just had to basically deal with it. So that did not play out well for them.
He got into a position where he was doubling support with black male voters. Right. I mean, it's just an incredible change there. All right. Also, beyond race, also looking at the women vote.
Yes.
You said this was something you were really watching closely last night.
Yes.
What's the story?
So the narrative going into election night last night is that women were going to carry Kamala Harris across the finish line, that they were voting on the issue of abortion. Well, there were certainly some women who were registered Democrats who voted on the issue as single issue voters, but the data showing that Donald Trump actually won over a number of suburban women in the suburbs, in the places where they're concerned about inflation, going to the grocery store, paying the bills, and that suburban women actually went for Trump rather than for Kamala Harris.
I mean, she was looking to, their campaign was looking to run this number way up, and especially there were some surprises with some of those rural voters as well.
Yes.
But you listened to the one woman on the ground this morning that they were interviewing. She said, I've had to take on a second job just to pay for the high prices.
Yes.
That affects that vote. All right. One other thing on this category I wanted to look at, voters under age 30, the youth vote. Wow. There was a huge run up in the score for Donald Trump here with the under 30 crowd.
So the youth vote is always something that's elusive to campaigns, and they talk a lot to youth voters and about youth voters, but it's not guaranteed that they're actually going to show up. They did show up for the polls, but again, the assumption from Democrats was that they would show up for the left wing of the party of the ticket. They actually showed up in droves for Donald Trump in higher numbers. Now, you can attribute that to a number of tactics they used. Donald Trump went on a lot of these podcasts that younger people listen to. Kamala Harris dodged those interviews, but they also did reach out in a lot of ways with policy positions from Kamala Harris, trying to court those voters. Clearly, it didn't work.
One of our first pieces of data of the night was looking at the most important issues facing the country for voters. It's the economy, it's jobs. This was by an overwhelming majority for voters. This was the biggest concern. Immigration, still double digits there, but Democrats spent so much time on abortion.
This was their whole gamble here with the women. This is what they wanted, but then women ended up voting on economy and jobs, immigration. I would see public safety is also included in this immigration number, just given the crime we've seen all over the country in the cities with illegal immigration. Also, these two numbers blow up an assumption from Democrats that Hispanics are voting on the immigration issue in favor of more open borders and amnesty, when they're voting actually for more border control and stronger enforcement of current laws. And of course, this economic number encompasses everyone inside the country.
American Hispanic voters are in favor of legal immigration. They are against illegal. Yes, exactly. Katie, thank you so much.
Great to see you.
All right. John, back to you.
Sandra, control of the House still up for grabs. Can Republicans secure a trifecta? The chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, Richard Hudson, is up next to help answer that question. Plus this.
But immigration has been a terrible decision for Democrats. I don't know who they think they were playing to when they let millions of people come cruising through the border. I'm not sure they were playing to anything that was smart here in terms of an open border. And that's what it is, an open border.
This border crisis becoming a fatal flaw for Democrats this election, leading to a result we have not seen in more than a century. Lawrence Jones reacts to that coming up. Trump winning North Carolina for the third time and by his widest margin yet. North Carolina Congressman Richard Hudson is standing by to weigh in. But first, let's get to Jonathan Seri. He's live in Raleigh for us. Jonathan, what impact did Helene have on the turnout there?
Hi, Sandra. Well, conventional wisdom suggested it would suppress voter turnout. Instead, the opposite happened. A record 5.7 million North Carolinians cast ballots. And what surprised many is the heavy voter turnout in the western part of the state that was hard hit during Hurricane Helene. When you talk with folks there about how they feel about the federal disaster response, their opinion falls largely along party lines. And what helped the Trump campaign is, other than the blue dot of Boone and Asheville, Western North Carolina is reliably Republican. Statewide, kitchen table issues were at the top of voters' minds.
It always bothers me that any particular group, color, the amount of melanin in your skin, or whatever your gender you pick to be, is going to determine your politics. That's absurd. But I think it goes back again to the issues that really matter. The economy, the economy, the economy.
But this battleground state has a tradition of electing governors and presidents from opposite parties. Such was the case last night. Democrat Josh Stein will become North Carolina's first Jewish governor.
If I didn't earn your vote in this election, I hope to earn your trust by working hard for you as your governor.
And Stein defeated Republican Mark Robinson in that race. Robinson currently serves as North Carolina's lieutenant governor, and he says he will spend the rest of his term trying to help the people of Western North Carolina recover. Sandra?
Live from Raleigh, Jonathan Seri. Thank you, John.
All right, to the touch screen now, and let's bring in North Carolina Congressman Richard Hudson. He's also the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. It was his job to win back control of the House. Congressman, good to be with you. I want to go through your home state first of all, because I found this pretty interesting. Donald Trump flipped the state back after winning it in 2016 and losing it in 2020. If you take a look at the results in some of the big Democratic counties here, like Wake County, where Raleigh is, in the Triangle area, the numbers for Kamala Harris are much different than they were 4 years ago. They're not that much different for Donald Trump either. It's the same thing here in Charlotte. The numbers aren't identical, but they're very, very close. And then out here in Buncombe County, it's pretty much the same thing. So if those numbers in the big Democratic areas didn't change a whole lot, if her turnout wasn't really suppressed, how was it that Donald Trump managed to take the state back this year?
Well, I think President Donald Trump did a great job of turning out the vote in North Carolina. You mentioned earlier Western North Carolina. There was a concerted effort to make sure those folks, many of them displaced, had an opportunity to vote. And so I just give credit to President Trump. He, first of all, connected with the voters on the issues that matter to them, the cost of things, inflation's impact on their families, crime, particularly caused by the open border. These issues resonated with the voters in North Carolina, and they did a very good job of turning out their vote.
What I found really fascinating was this whole area here of the western part of North Carolina that got hit so badly, as you pointed out, by Hurricane Helene. There was a lot of voter turnout here. How did they manage to do that?
Well, we made sure that there were voting places. In some cases, entire towns were washed away. And so there was a big effort to make sure that there were accessible voting locations. There was a lot of voter contact by the Trump campaign, by the Republican Party, to make sure people had the right information. They knew where they could go to vote. And I think it paid off. All
right, let's go to where the rubber meets the road for you, and that's the House races. Here's where we are right now. Republicans have 200 seats. Democrats have 180. Of course, 218 seats needed for the majority. So here's where we are coming out of last night. The Democrats picked up 3 seats. The Republicans picked up 4 seats. So that's a net gain of +1 for the Republicans. How are you going to get back the majority? Because Speaker Johnson says he's quite confident that it will happen. And our Fox News voter analysis shows that Republicans do have a slight lead in the House.
Well, I'm confident Republicans are going to hold the House majority. I think the Speaker is exactly right. And I think, frankly, we can thank President Trump for the incredible turnout. I think he was a net positive everywhere across the country for Republicans. But Speaker Johnson did a tremendous job. He raised over $300 million for our team, $27 million directly for the NRCC. This is a guy who came into the job 13 months ago with no political operation, had to build it from scratch. Speaker Johnson put us on his back and carried us to the promised land. We're going to hold the House. We were able to net 3-seat pickup in North Carolina. We were able to flip 2 seats in Pennsylvania. And we were able to flip an open seat in Michigan that was held by the Democrats. And so as we look forward, there's a number of races in California in particular where we're still counting votes. But we feel very optimistic. Right. It may be a few days, but we like where we are, and we feel like we are definitely going to hold the House majority.
All right. So let me close that with this quick question. If you do indeed get carried to the promised land and you maintain control of the House, you've got control of the Senate, you've got control of the presidency, you got that trifecta, the American people are going to expect that you're going to get things done. So what do you say to the American people?
I'd say the cavalry's on the way. The American people are ready for change. They're sick and tired of the policies of the Biden-Harris administration. They're sick of things costing too much. They're sick of this open border and the crime and the fentanyl that come along with it. And President Trump and Congress, we're ready to work with him. We're going to turn this around, and you're going to see a lot of hard work. And, there are many of these issues that shouldn't be partisan. Hopefully we'll get Democrats to work with us.
All right. Well, if you win back control of the House, we will hold you to account on that front. Congressman, good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Sandra?
All right. He's already appointed 3 justices to the Supreme Court with another 4 years in office. Will President-elect Trump have a chance to appoint more? That is a big question. Jonathan Turley will put it to him. John?
Plus, the balance of power in the Senate with President-elect Donald Trump to concede the election, to congratulate him on winning. Apparently, she discussed the importance of a peaceful transfer of power and being president for all Americans. She is going to be delivering remarks at Howard University, 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we will hear more from her there. And here's where the sleep deprivation kicks in. all morning, I've been mixing up Pennsylvania and North Carolina, and I did it again there with the chairman of the NRCC. I said that Trump won back North Carolina. No, he won it in 2016, 2020, and 2024. But every time I've gone to hit North Carolina on the touchable map, I hit Pennsylvania.
That's interesting.
It's like stuck in my brain.
Oh, well, you know what? The next hour and 15 minutes is going to be really fun. You just don't know. It's like watching NASCAR. You just don't know.
It is. You don't know when there's going to be a pileup in turn 3. You get up there in the marbles and everything starts to go squirrely.
Well, this is a moment we've been waiting for, right? Because last night we did not see or hear from Vice President Kamala Harris. But we have now gotten word through Peter Doocy at the White House that she has indeed called the president-elect. So now next we will see and hear her at 4 o'clock. She'll deliver her message.
Yep, looking forward to that. We'll carry that live for you.
All right. When President-elect Trump returns to office for his second term, it is possible he could have the chance to replace one or more justices on the Supreme Court after appointing 3 during his first term. Jonathan Turley is a constitutional law attorney and Fox News contributor, and he has the joy of answering our questions that we hope make sense. So set this up for us. I mean, what is at stake here? And, you know, what could the next 4 years look like?
Well, for the Supreme Court, those 9 citizens were probably glued to their TVs because, for one thing, the Supreme Court dodged a bullet in that you had Democratic senators saying they wanted to pack the court. One of them said that Kamala Harris was in support of that plan. That would have really been devastating to the court. But now you also have a little more breathing room for justices like Clarence Thomas, who's getting older, and maybe Samuel Alito. They now have a safe harbor period in which they can get a replacement who will be similar in terms of their jurisprudential views. And my guess is that one or both of them could very well use that. This is a margin that would guarantee that type of transition. The other big change, of course, is that many of the things that they've done over the last few years are now going to be cemented. The issue of abortion will remain with the states. Gun rights will remain robustly defended. So will religious freedom cases. So you're not going to have a change for at least a decade or so, very likely, in the makeup of the court as being more conservative. That also means that there's going to be a generation of Americans that are going to grow up with issues like abortion being decided by citizens in each individual state.
So there's also been talk that Sonia Sotomayor should step down. The talk has not been coming from her.
Yeah.
It's been coming from other people. I assume that she's not going to likely entertain retirement anytime soon.
Well, 2 things happened around 2:30 a.m. last night. One was the filibuster movement suddenly went silent on the left, and also the dump Sotomayor movement, which was coming from the left, encouraging her to retire, is also suddenly silent. This is a 4-year period, and so Justice Sotomayor will have to make her decision. Look, I supported her when the left was trying to give her the boot off the court. She's healthy. She's writing some of the most powerful opinions of her career. I don't see any reason why she would retire. So most of the eyes on the court are looking at Clarence Thomas, who's the older member of the court, and also possibly Alito. Many justices will wait for a safe harbor period so that their legacy is protected.
So Thomas is 76, Alito 74. Chickens.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe they want to do something else.
That's right. But the thing is, they're both doing very well. They're both intellectually as sharp as they've always been. Thomas is more active in oral arguments than he has ever been in his career. So there's no real burning need. Now, there is a period of 2 years, a grace period, where a justice can make this move. When you're 2 years before the next election, that's the red line. And so if they're going to make this move, they really have to sort of think about doing it in the next year or so.
So that's great information and something to look for. While I put this up on the screen from our Fox News voter analysis, Jonathan, this is where voters stood in our survey on the Supreme Court. We asked, do you approve or disapprove on the way the Supreme Court is handling its job? Those that somewhat approved, 33%. Those that strongly approved, 17%. Safe to say this is, about even, although there's more who say they strongly disapprove and strongly somewhat disapprove.
Well, I mean, about 50% either approve or somewhat approve. That is astronomically higher than Congress. One of the things that I say to members of Congress who want to pack the court is that your institution is about as popular as Ebola. And so it's saying that, my gosh, the court's lost some of its support. The court is still ranked up there in one of the more popular institutions. And so I think that these justices want to return to normalcy. They really did not want to get involved in this election. You could see that in the decisions they were making. They wanted that cup to pass from their lips. I think they'll be very happy with this. The terrible thing is that a stable democracy broke out last night, so legal analysts were barely seen, and that's a very sad thing. But the good thing is we didn't have legal problems. If you see me, it's like seeing your cardiologist. It's not good news. So democracy was stronger, and I ate a lot of stuff in the green room.
It was
and
great.
you wrote a lot of articles.
I did write a lot of columns, yeah.
Lặp lại như vậy cho đến hết hàng. Hàng số 5. Móc 3 mũi nửa kép. Chân thứ tư, móc 2 mũi nửa kép vào chung một chân. Ba mũi nửa kép. Hai mũi nửa kép vào chung một chân lần thứ 3. Ba mũi nửa kép. Hai mũi nửa kép vào chung một chân. Lặp lại như vậy cho đến hết hàng. Hai mũi nửa kép vào chung một chân. Tiếp theo là 3 mũi nửa kép. Móc tất cả 11 lần như vậy. Ba mũi nửa kép. Hai mũi nửa kép vào chung một chân. Đời son sợi màu vàng. Mong một hàng mũi chờ rộng sợi màu vàng.